This is a quick video introducing you to short assignment number 2. Now that you have a good foundation for creating hypotheses and identifying variables within them from short assignment number 1, you'll need a good way to quantify or measure them. For you to be successful on this assignment, you'll need to do some basic background research on just one variable. Please do not select more than one variable, or do not select an entire hypothesis because this will unnecessarily complicate this assignment. In short assignment number 2, you're going to identify a single variable, find a definition from the literature on that variable, find a measure of that variable, and then add some additional items to the measure. Let's explore short assignment 2 in a little further detail. So you might be thinking to yourself, what's the purpose of this assignment? If you remember from our discussion way back on what separates quantitative research from qualitative research, quantitative research is all about the investigation of data using numerical variables. For us to be able to estimate patterns or relationships of variables within these data, we must first measure these variables. The main objective of this particular short assignment is that I want to know how adept you are at the explication process, involving both the conceptualization phase, or finding a definition of the variable, and then the operationalization phase, which is finding a measure that is consistent with that definition. This short assignment will ask you to search the internet for both a definition and measure of a communication variable. And I'll note here that the definition and measure might not come from the same article. A good place to start such a scholarly search of the literature is Google Scholar. Remember, a good match between the definition and measure is critical for the validity of your study. In this short assignment, I want you to take away 4 different ideas on which the rubric will be based. First, I want you to be able to identify variables in a hypothesis. Yes, you already did that in short assignment number 1, but this is important in this short assignment as well. Second, I want you to be able to find a definition and existing measure of that variable you select. Third, I want you to be able to format this measure in a questionnaire form. Remember, this is only being done for one variable, but in any given study, you'll need to find as many measures as there are variables in your hypotheses or research questions. And finally, I want you to be able to come up with additional items to add to this existing measure. So let's try to dive a bit deeper into the steps of this assignment. The first step is to come up with a communication variable. A variable is defined as any condition of an experiment or characteristic of an entity, person, or object that can take on different categories, levels, or values, and that can be quantified. You already identified an assortment of communication variables in your first short assignment, so please feel free to use one of those. Examples of variables include depression, self-esteem, source credibility, relational commitment, religiosity, internet use, number of collective we, us language in letter writing, or even hair color. I do want to challenge you to select a variable more complex than mere demographics like gender or education. Look for a variable that is measured by multiple indicators or items like the one I provide you in the example on the assignment description. After arriving at your one variable, the next step is to see how that variable has been defined by experts in that area of research. This will mean that you have to do some light digging online to find a suitable definition. And when I say define a variable, you'll want to include both the denotative or dictionary definition and the connotative definition, which is how to understand that variable in its appropriate context. Why do we have to find a definition for the variable? It's so we know exactly what that variable means and what it doesn't mean. And once we boldly claim that this is the definition we're adopting, others who read our research will be on the same page as us. This is why the conceptualization phase is so important in research. What is the best way to find a definition for a variable or construct? I would of course recommend you turning to the internet. Using either Google Scholar or the library website, you can simply try to type into the search field in quotation marks your variable name is defined as and see what you get. You may not get the golden egg on the first article, so be flexible and keep digging. The next step after settling on a definition of the variable that makes most sense to you is to find a measure consistent with that definition. You might be wondering to yourself, how do I go about finding a measure? Is there a book out there that contains all measures? The answer is unfortunately no. There's no one book that contains all measures used in communication research. Here's how I usually track down measures. I go to one of my favorite online sites. Sometimes I'll go to ProQuest's website and look through master's theses or doctoral dissertations for the measure. Or I'll go to Google Scholar. If I'm, say, looking for a relational satisfaction measure, I'll simply type into the search bar, relational satisfaction measure. You might have to look in the main text or in the appendix of the article. One thing I might suggest is that if you're looking for a measure that was used in a study, find that measure citation and go back to the original article. It usually is in there. After locating the existing measure you want to use for this short assignment, you're ready to start composing the document. First, type out the definition of the variable you've adopted. For instance, in this example, I typed out relational satisfaction is defined as followed by the denotative and connotative definition. Next, write out a set of instructions for how you want participants to complete this measure. You can see in the example how I usually write out these instructions. Feel free to borrow any of the language from this example. One word of caution. New researchers will often write out something like, you're being asked to fill out a measure of relational satisfaction. I would advise against telling your participants what exactly you're having them report on. This is because telling your participants about the nature of the study might influence them to respond in a way that they think is helping you, thereby biasing the results. This is called demand effects. Next, you'll want to copy the items from the measure. Don't forget to include the scale as well as the anchors for that scale. I would also suggest that if you find a very large measure replete with items, you can take about 5 to 8 items from that measure for this assignment. Finally, you'll include additional items you come up with by yourself. Remember that these items will be graded on whether they meet the face validity and reliability test. That's about it for this short assignment. This short assignment reflects the next and pivotal step in becoming an independent quantitative social scientific researcher. This is simply one more tool that you will have in your toolbox when leaving this course, which I hope will make you more marketable and research conscious. If you have difficulties locating a measure or run into any issues with this assignment, please don't hesitate to reach out to me for help. As always, I hope you have a great experience with this assignment, and I hope you learn a lot.